you can hear me. Hello, thank you. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, everyone. I'm Sarah Church from Alameda County, and I'm pleased to get to speak about some of the implementation that we've been doing around heat resilience efforts in our county. I know many of these efforts are echoed by things you're doing in your own community. Our climate action plan, passed in 2010, has a whole section devoted to actions beyond reduction, climate adaptation. So we're building on those recommendations at this point. And there's so many important elements of climate resilience. Plans and policies are important, assessments are important. I'm going to focus today on our implementation because we find that sometimes the plans and the assessments take a lot of resources, and we really want to get to that implementation phase, and I'm going to speak about that. Focus. We've heard a lot of focus today on vulnerable communities and their needs, and we find in our program that if we focus on those most vulnerable, the solutions we come up with are likely to also work for those with less vulnerability. So we worked early on, collaborated and shared resources with our public health department, and they had actually already done a heat vulnerability map, a quick and dirty map that they actually borrowed from Contra, Costa County, based on these factors, biological factors such as age, social exclusion factors, socioeconomic factors, which can certainly play a role as we heard in the earlier presentations, and living condition factors, lack of air conditioning, and so on. And here's the map. You can see the area circled. There's a lot of vulnerability in Oakland, and then within the area circled, there's bright spots of red within our unincorporated county. So we knew that that was actually the responsibility of our planning department. And if you look back at the factors considered in this map, you can see the ones highlighted here: lack of tree canopy, impervious surfaces. Those are actually aspects of the built environment that can be influenced by the work of our planning department, our policies, and how they're enacted in our unincorporated county. So we knew there was an opportunity here to act to increase the resilience or to combat this vulnerability that we saw in our community through the actions of our planning department. So we brought a workshop, we want to talk about specifically tree cover, because I'll be addressing that. We've talked a lot about it today. You can see that, let's do this animation. So the darker portions many of these communities are unincorporated. Ashland, Cherlin, and San Lorenzo, you can see here, have less than 1% tree cover. You have a lot of socioeconomic need in those areas as well, and vulnerability. In Castro Valley, which is also unincorporated, we have 22% tree cover, right? So there's a difference here that we can remedy. And we were pleased to bring this information to our planning department in an interactive workshop, not unlike what we're doing here today, but specifically for our planning department, knowing that they could then think about what specific strategies needed to be taken to address heat vulnerability through the built environment. So here's part of the presentation. You can see the map on display there with everyone from our planning department in the audience. We presented clear best practices that we knew of. In Davis, California, they have a requirement for tree cover within parking lots that helps incorporate overall tree cover in the community. And we have a lot of interactivity where we learned from the group. There were, these staff in our planning department are experts in their field. They know their communities really well. We want to hear from them. What are the solutions that will work for our community with the specific work that you do every day, and heard from them and have them bounce ideas off of one another. And there are a lot of things we accomplished with this workshop. We got top-level buy-in because we had actually gotten a grant from the Coastal Conservancy to support the work. So we got to come and say, we're bringing resources to do this, right? So we got the top-level leaders engaged. The planning department members had an understanding of their role and how they could address climate change, and we had shrunk it down from all the different climate impacts just to heat, specifically to heat islands, and to their role, how heat is exacerbated through the built environment. So they really saw what their role was in combating this issue and coming up with solutions for it. We heard these great ideas from them, and that laid groundwork for a project that we did. We've already started called Cooling Our Communities. This is in the communities of Ashland and Cherlin, where there's a lot of vulnerability, as on the maps you saw earlier. And we are doing tree planting and community resilience education. You can see this is a flyer for the program. I just want to mention one statistic, which is that we found through some measure that a tree can create the same cooling capacity as 10 room-size air conditioners. And so this particular fact has been a real interest to our community members, a lot of whom don't have air conditioning. So as I said, we're doing heat resilience education, a lot of community engagement and community events. We're going to where the community is and planting hundreds of trees in the community. And the focus is on residential trees, on private land. So we're giving the trees and also investing in maintenance and planting for community members. And I'll say a little bit more, but we are certainly working with renters. So we have a lot of renters in the community, and thinking about also creating materials specifically for landlords. And because we're working with the planning department, we often are thinking about landlords and what will help them participate in the program. This is a truly cross-agency effort. Our public health department is a key partner. The planning department is driving it forward, and then sustainability brings that climate lens and climate projections to help inform the process. Community engagement has been just a bright spot and a real benefit to the work. We work with a community organization to do our community engagement process, and they came up with the idea, actually, they are already deeply embedded with our community. They came up with the idea of doing community ambassadors, so having local leaders, rather than having staff come and do presentations, we're actually preparing materials, cards of all the trees that could be planted under the program, and they're in English and Spanish, and they will be used by these community members. Here they are, one of them is teaching the other, showing one of the tools that will help people site trees on their property. If there's a software that helps them site them, where they'll have the greatest cooling potential for the household. And given how the sun changes over the course of the day. So they're kind of looking at the tool and learning a lot, and then they're going to go out into their communities and talk to their neighbors about how to stay cool and this potential to get free trees. We created a new resource with really accessible language and accessible imagery, working with our community partners, and focused on interventions. There are a lot of flyers out there, what to do on a hot day. If you look at them, they don't necessarily address this climate-related impact of hotter nighttime temperatures. A lot of them are about daytime actions. So we really focus on what can people do at night. I was interested to hear that statistic about people spend 60% of their time in their homes. We really know that that's where some of the health impacts happen, at night and in people's homes. And this is also in Spanish as well. I wanted to share a lesson actually from our wildfire smoke resilience work, which feels very different, but we did some community engagement around that had lessons that translated into this project, or these projects around heat resilience, which is that we went out into our community on our smoke project and asked vulnerable members of our community, how do you get information about how to protect yourself in a big health-related event? How do you get a health advisory or know how to protect yourself during smoke in that case, but they also work for heat? We found that people don't necessarily get our AC alert official government communications. They haven't signed up for the system. I'm seeing some nodding in the room. I know you all have SMC alert here. But they do learn about how to protect themselves from their community institutions. It might be a school, a place of worship, a senior center. There are community, and also a lot of vulnerable folks may have someone in their family or someone who works with a service provider who is a government worker or who has a contract through the government. So these trusted community partners or institutions can be conduits of information, and people will trust those networks, maybe more than they would trust a government communication, and it can be a pipeline of information out to them. So it's important to get information through those community conduits, get information to them before the warm season if possible, so that they will be prepared on what to do when things get hot. Providing information to our service providers. If we sign our service providers up for our AC alert system, then they can pass the information along. And communication also needs to be provided in locally spoken languages and tailored to varying life circumstances and stressors. So if we're telling people turn on your air conditioning and they don't have air conditioning, they're going to tune out the message. So thinking in advance about what messages are going to work for our community is key in our smoke work, and I think the lessons translate to heat. We learned a lot of lessons already through our program, but I want to share a couple. One is just this value of cross-agency work. There are different cultures throughout our community. The folks that send out our AC alerts, our Office of Emergency Services, are within our Sheriff's Department. They don't always get to talk to folks in our Public Health Department or our Planning Department, but it's important for those folks to all talk together, very much so. And it's been the real kind of magic of these programs is when you get those people in a room, they come to solutions really fast. They're all really good at their jobs. Talking to the people in the community was key, hearing from the community members themselves. There were a lot of concerns from renters about, how am I going to talk to my landlord about this? So that's why we already have drafted some materials that can be given to landlords and are thinking from the perspective of landlords as well. And we heard concern about maintenance needs, so we've built in support for maintenance into the program. Somebody says, oh, you're going to give me a tree, but then you're going to leave me on my own. So we're able to know what those concerns would be, so we can have the materials reflect answers to those questions that are going to come up in people's minds. Also, when working on heat, we found this is simple but a very important lesson, which is to consider season in all phases. So if you're going out to the community, you want to talk to people about what do you do on a hot day, but it's the middle of winter. It might be harder to start that conversation going. So just thinking about what are the seasons and meeting people where they are in every case has always been useful. And you can think about creative ways to have them remember back to certain heat waves or something. But just make sure you understand the impact of season in planting cycles and in people's minds. We're pleased that a new project is germinating right now in our planning department. I wanted to mention this because we were so pleased that, starting off on this one project, cooling our communities is very important, but there are other projects that could come out. And what we found is that the project ideas that were brainstormed during the workshop had a way of making it through the planning department, and some of them are coming to fruition on a different timeline. You can see here this is a picture from our workshop. A tree ordinance was one of the bold ideas that came out of the workshop, and now we're moving forward on it a couple years later. And we're also looking forward to, we're currently working on a project to a new heat vulnerability mapping. We found a little bit of funds to do a more sophisticated composite map of heat vulnerability that we can play with and has GIS layers that we can change. We added in some new factors, including land surface temperature from the last heat wave, which includes day and night temperatures, speaking to this issue of, we really want to know what people are experiencing at night and how that's going to impact our population. We're mapping, you can see here the red are the more vulnerable areas, and then those blue dots there, those are cooling center locations. And so we're going to be able to look at where's the vulnerability and how does that compare to where our cooling centers are located. So that can inform decisions about how to place cooling centers, when to open them, and we're also going to be able to see when those cooling centers are open in the day and during the week, because some are open in the evening, so that could also help make sure that people have coverage at different times of the day and different times of the week with cooling centers. And I wanted to share a resource. We have created a guide to our workshop model on this very focused workshop model for a particular department to help them decide how they're going to take action around an issue such as heat resilience or addressing heat in the built environment. And this can be done with one department or with a cross-agency partnership. So the guide is available if you're interested for local government or for any organization that wants to come. We have a copy of it in the back for any organization that wants to bring people together in a half-day process to catalyze climate adaptation projects. Great, and I'd like to bring up Laura from Contra Costa. I'm looking forward to hearing her presentation as well.